Welcome to all. We now join this forum in progress.
Of 1976 graduate of Lafayette High School, where he earned college credit hours and after attending Kentucky State University in Eastern Kentucky. He is also the first male graduate of the Lexington Urban League's Word Processing Training Program. He hopes his work in civil and human rights as a human rights activist with the Kentucky Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression and Fellowship of Reconciliation will give him an edge of being more empathetic to others' people's needs and concerns, as well as gain the support of Kentucky voters. Smith is single, has one son, 3 grandkids, and 3 granddogs. He's also equal parts a CDO Class A driver, musician, promoter, and event planner. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you all candidate Bennie J Smith.
Good evening.
Now we will go to the next candidate that we have here. And I do apologize, technology is doing its thing. Okay, I now have candidate Eric Rothmuller. And I hope I'm saying that last name correctly.
Rothmuller, but it's okay.
Rothmuller?
Yep.
Rothmuller. Okay, I do apologize. Eric Rothmuller of Louisville, Kentucky. He is a small business owner of an online marketing company and progressive advocate. His background includes mortgage marketing and 5 years in the nonprofit field, which was mostly at an animal shelter, where Eric served as a volunteer coordinator and animal control officer. Eric Muller is a U.S. Senate candidate for Kentucky 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Eric Rothmuller. Just make sure I'm saying it correctly.
Oh, you got it. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you Mike Broihier for Kentucky. Am I saying that correct? Is Mike on the call?
Yeah, it's pronounced Broihier.
Broihier. Okay, I apologize.
No worries.
Oh, okay. Well, Mike Broihier is a farmer and educator, former small town newspaper editor, and a former Marine officer. Mike led Marines and sailors in wartime and peace, ashore and afloat, for over 20 years. In 2005, Mike retired from the Marine Corps. He and his wife, Lynn, also a retired Marine officer, bought a 75-acre farm in the rolling hills of South Central Kentucky and Lincoln County to put down roots, to work the land, and to be a part of the community. For the past 14 years, Mike and Lynn have lived and worked on their farm outside of Stanford, Kentucky. They have raised grass-fed beef and pastured poultry, pigs, and sheep. They also established the largest all-natural asparagus operation in Central Kentucky, supplying farmers markets and farm-to-table restaurants in the Lexington area. In addition to farming, Mark worked for 5 years as a reporter and editor for the third oldest newspaper in Kentucky, a local weekly paper. He has reported on just about every aspect of rural life and fiscal court meetings to elementary school award ceremonies, from rural economic changes to county government controversies. As a part of this community, he has seen the highs and lows and happy and sad. Each story has become a part of him and shaped his views with understanding of Kentucky. In the winter months, or when the weather is too bad to farm, Mike fills in as a substitute teacher, in the Lincoln County school system. He knows if a student is struggling with challenges at home or simply needs a pat on the back or a nod of understanding. He knows the difficulties of our Kentucky teachers and educators that they face every day, not only in the classroom, but with their pensions under attack by Republicans in Frankfort. Mike deeps appreciation, understanding, and respect for the struggles working families in rural communities endure every day in Kentucky is only possible from having lived and being a part of its for the years. This is who Mike is. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mike Muller.
Well, it's Mike Broihier, but thank you,
Broihier.
Councilwoman
Oh, I'm
Radcliffe.
so sorry.
That's okay. No worries.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
I answered to about anything. So just get her in the ballpark, and I'll answer. It's a hard to say name, so I've gotten used to it over the years. But thank you so much for having us all, and for making this technological leap happen, so we can continue on with our campaign.
We are doing, I'm telling you, we're trying here. But it is our pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Now, I do believe I have a... Jimmy Ausbrooks?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, it's coming here. It's coming. All right. So we have candidate Jimmy Ausbrooks. Jimmy Ausbrooks was born May 3rd, 1971 in Franklin, Kentucky, and continues to reside and work in Franklin, Kentucky. He is graduated from Oneida Baptist Institute in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains in Eastern Kentucky. He earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in government from Western Kentucky University in 2000, where as a student he interned at the Washington Center. In 1996, he worked at the Democratic National Convention, Chairman Don Fowler's office at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. In 1997, by the invitation of Senator Wendell Ford, attended the inauguration of President William Jefferson Clinton. He earned his Master of Education degree in counseling and human development from Lindsey Wilson College in 2018. He's been a small business owner and spent nearly 20 years in sales and customers before becoming a licensed professional counselor. As a counselor servicing his community in private practice, he serves both mental issues and substance abuse treatment needs of adults and children in his rural community of Simpson County. He's an openly gay and advocates for both his professional and the LGBTQ community. He serves the board of Kentucky Counseling Association, KCA, and serves as the president of the Kentucky Association for the LGBTQ Issues in Counseling. He has a history of advocating for equality and social justice in Kentucky. Quick introduction and statement. He's a proud native of Kentucky, born and raised, and he is excited to be a part of this system to be able to change it for the better. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you. Oh, I'm sorry, there was more to this. He has a personal statement he wanted to add on as well. I am a pro-woman's choice, healthcare for all, climate change believing, minimum wage raising, LGBTQ embracing, immigration reforming, teacher supporting, pay gap eliminating Democrat, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Jimmy Ausbrooks.
Good evening.
Good evening. We're gonna have some fun. I can tell. I'm loving these bios here. Now, there's just one last one I'm looking for Maggie Jo.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you got it in time. I'm so sorry. I can introduce myself if you'd like.
We will definitely make time for you to do so. And because we just finished the bios, Miss Maggie Jo, I'm going to definitely let you take that opportunity to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. I am Maggie Jo Hilliard. I'm originally from Bowling Green, Kentucky. I have a law degree and a degree in journalism and art from undergrad at Western Kentucky University. I've been a practicing attorney for 15 years, mostly criminal law, a little bit of appellate, some civil, and both federal and state courts. I'm licensed in 2 states. I've been an entrepreneur for about 20 years, doing business development for various small businesses to nonprofits and also political candidates. I began my political adventure in around 2004 while I was in law school, and then went on to assist with Obama's campaign in Jacksonville, Florida as one of the initial grassroots fundraisers for the steering committee down there. And then returned home in 2016 and worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign here in Bowling Green. I would say that my biggest issues that probably differentiate me from some of my other very progressive candidates, I'm a big advocate for online voting. I feel that the people are not getting an adequate voice in their government. So online voting through the United States Postal Service might be a good way to give people a verifiable vote. So yeah, I'm just the mother of a small Chihuahua, and that's about it.
Well, Maggie Jo, we welcome you to be a part of this forum.
Thank you.
We actually welcome all of you, and thank you all for sharing your bios. I look forward to hearing more from you. And now we will go right into the question and answer session. We're going to ask each of you all questions. They're actually coming from the executive committee. And I'm going to let Lacey introduce those. Lacey? Okay. Bear with us just 1 second. We love technology. We just love it.
Amen.
We love it. We love it. All righty. So in the process of all of this, and we do apologize, we did get word that candidate Charles Booker would not be in attendance on tonight, but we will still continue to go on. And we know with a lot of things going on across the state, a lot of things are going on that he has to be probably involved in. Okay. Okay, and we do have a timekeeper, correct, Lacey? Okay.
Correct. You do have a timekeeper.
We do have a timekeeper. Okay. And so at this time, what we're going to do is we're going to, now that we've introduced all of you, we're going to go ahead and allow each of you to give a 30-minute opening statement about something that you would like for us to know about you as the candidate that was not written from your bio. And we can start in the order of, I know Maggie Jo just completed, so we can go right into, I guess we can start with Mike.
You said 30 minutes.
30 seconds, I apologize.
Oh.
Oh, no, 30 seconds to a minute. I
myself for
apologize.
30
30 seconds to a minute. I didn't mean to scare anybody. I promise I didn't. I did not mean to do that. Yes, it is totally Monday. So we're going to go ahead and start with, I believe we're going to start with Mike. Yeah.
Okay. I'll begin my 30-minute discourse on my life. I was born a small child in Racine, Wisconsin. No, my name's Mike. My name's Mike Broihier. My name's Mike Broihier, and I'm a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel and educator. I've taught every grade from kindergarten through college. As you mentioned earlier, I was a newspaper reporter for quite a while, a farmer. Most importantly, you know, I'm a parent, and most recently a grandfather. And I think it was the impending birth of our granddaughter that really got me thinking about the way things are going on in this country, and the fact that I'm genuinely afraid that we are sliding into authoritarianism. You know, I've been around the world and I've seen some pretty scary stuff, but I never thought I'd see these things in our country, that we'd have a government with complete disregard for the rule of law, for the separation of powers, for the checks and balances, and that is what compelled me to get into this race, because I swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, and that is under threat right now, and that is what compelled me to put my hat in the ring and begin this pursuit of defeating Mitch McConnell. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we will hear from Jimmy Ausbrooks.
All right. A little bit more about me as a mental health professional. I am an advocate for expanding mental health care and substance abuse treatment. Prime example of why we have this need that needs to be addressed. As a licensed professional counselor, I can only bill Medicaid and private insurance. And in the office that I used to work in, we had one lady that was able to bill Medicare. She had over 300 clients. Anybody in the profession know you can bill 20 to 25 hours a week. That's 100 people. So her clientele is over 300. So that means they're getting to see her once every 3 months if they're lucky. Hope that they don't have to miss an appointment, because then it could be another 3 to 6 months. That's serious. And it's one of the things that I'm going to really, really advocate for is our healthcare system. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jimmy. Let's see. Can we go with Eric?
Yep. Well, all I can really say about me is, I'm a normal guy that's pretty much a policy wonk. The only reason that I'm in here is I want to pass progressive policies that benefit people's lives. That's all that I'm about. So what you get with me is, someone's going to fight to get money out of politics and move towards the publicly financed election system, single-payer Medicare for all, combating climate change, ending our policy of endless regime change war, investing in our infrastructure, raising the minimum wage to a living wage of at least $15 an hour, and then tying that to inflation so that we don't have to come back and keep having these fights. Getting rid of right-to-work laws and expanding unions and worker rights and tuition-free college, eliminating student loan debt, medical debt, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure we'll get into the issues, but that's all I'm about, And when I looked at this race, when I first entered it, I didn't see anyone, now some people, granted, have hopped in after me, but I didn't see anyone that really represented me or people that shared my ideology. And I just wanted to hop in and give someone to vote for where they feel like they would be represented. So that's me.
Well, I thank you very much. And candidates, if you all could do me a favor, can you look at your phones and make sure your volume is turned all the way up? I had a lot of volume before the call started, but for some reason it's like I'm not hearing you all as well as I was in the beginning. So could you all check to make sure your volume is all the way up?
Yeah. Am I silent? Or am I like off?
I just wanted to make sure I have everybody. Some of your voices have faded out a little bit. I don't know if it's because you were talking but yeah, I just want to make sure that we all can hear you all well when you're saying your answers. All right, Bennie J.
Good evening. First of all, giving full honor and glory to the Creator. I'm blessed and honored to be a part of this special occasion with some outstanding candidates here in this 2020 U.S. Senate candidate race. Basically, I've been in the civil and human rights activism on the front lines with such notables as Reverend Lewis Coleman and Braden, et cetera, et cetera. I got into this race primarily, and it's not my first rodeo, but I got in this race particularly because after last year's government shutdown, I didn't particularly like the way, number one, we shouldn't have had a shutdown, and number two, I didn't like the way Mitch McConnell did not act to prevent it, not only from happening, but from preventing it from extending as long as it did. Of course, I ended up putting a fundraiser together for those federal workers who were affected by the shutdown. I think we need to change the perception of Kentucky from the outside, externally and internally, do some drastic, major investment into infrastructure. I proposed a rapid to light rail passenger train service that could be used to reconnect some of the key points in Kentucky. Been blessed to have traveled to and through all 120 counties in the last 20 years or so. So I'm pretty much know, or at least aware of everyone's needs and concerns in those areas. And as a driver of a 18-wheeler, and with my Class A license, I had a chance to travel to and through 46 to 48 states. So basically, everyone's going through the same thing. Kentucky's unique, obviously, with the coal mine declining and everything. But climate change, like I said, renewable energy, energy efficient technologies, living wage, being able to bring some stability to Kentucky, because we need to make sure everybody has health care. And, you know, it could be on a universal tip. You know, we can keep the Obamacare and tweak it so that everybody don't have to worry about getting penalized if they don't have it, and then try to make it more competitive by offering competition across the states. So it's, I don't want to take up too much time. I may have taken over my 30 seconds.
And we're going to finish it out with Maggie Jo.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you. So flowing in line, I guess, with my fellow candidates, first and foremost, we need an actual democracy where it's one person, one vote. We have far too many people that are left out of this process. Secondarily, we need better education, better teacher funding. I'm a huge fan of the setting a minimum wage, basically, is $60,000 per year for teachers. Also, Medicare for All, the Medicare for All Act would do a lot to improve not only our economic, but our health condition. We are only as strong as the least covered person. And so right now, with the current ongoing pandemic, we are at a huge disadvantage, knowing that the structures of our healthcare system don't protect everyone, because we know that this virus, we don't know where it could end up. And if we don't have the proper infrastructure in place, like Obama's pandemic coverage, you know, I don't know what we're going to do. With regard to the Green New Deal, I'm a huge fan. It's a great place to start. We have about 10 years to get caught up with what's going on. Humans have got to start taking responsibility for what we have done. We have detrimentally impacted our planet with our greed and focus on money. We have got to take a step back for the sake of our survival at this point. We are losing upwards, I think, 1,000 species in a year at this point, and we're going to lose about 1 million species over the next 10 years. And these are important species, things like pollinators, so that we can have food. It just seems so very logical to so many of us that these would be things that senators would work on, but time and time again, Mitch McConnell has failed us miserably with regard to our planet, here and abroad. Math and science, two of the items on my agenda. I think it's very important that we listen to the smart people out there. There are plenty of them. We don't need acting directors of our administrations. We need people that are actually qualified to do the job in there, working in those administrations. And I think we're seeing now where politics and money have collided in a way I know Eric has talked about quite a bit, where in order for someone to share their voice, you've got to pay somebody. You've got to pay social media, or you've got to, I think all the candidates can also relate. Things like our Kentucky Education Television has us raising each $50,000 in order to get on television. And I wrote them a very strong letter the other day. I too have a background in journalism, and I thought that the fairness rule was something that, you know, we could reference now that it's no longer actual law. Universal suffrage, I think anyone that is 16 years of age or older should be able to vote. If you can get shot in a school, you should be able to vote. If you can go to war, you should be able to drink and smoke marijuana. You know, at the end of the day, we have been choosing our battles poorly in terms of criminal justice. Our racially discriminatory processes of hundreds of years ago are continuing now. They are not over. More people are incarcerated in Kentucky. For example, 20% of the population of inmates is African American, whereas it's only about 9% of the population. That to me, just hashtag math, hashtag science. Like I said, cannabis legalization, not only could that help farmers and people coming back from war, it would be a huge economic boon for a state like Kentucky that is falling behind in both bachelor's degrees and high school degrees. Criminal justice reform in terms of mass incarceration. We've got to do something to quit putting taxpayer dollars into places where it doesn't make sense. new Americans, people that are just coming to this country, either under asylum or immigration policies, or whether they're refugees. We need to be kinder to everyone. Every person is entitled to the same constitutional rights, and we need to treat equally everyone, no matter what status they are. No human is illegal. Then a 21st century Bill of Rights, one that is fully inclusive from the top down and has not been picked at and amended over history. And then the most important thing on the ballot right now is, are you going to vote for the 99%? Or are you going to vote for the wealthy people that buy the opinions of the 99%? And I'm running because I have 15 years of litigation experience on behalf of individuals and small businesses, and I've seen the way that taxation has worked on the little people. Now we have about 0.1% of our population making as much money as the lower 90% of people, and that is patently unfair. And we've got to do something to step in and correct that, because we know that when climate change continues to get worse.
I'm sorry, that's all the time I can give you. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to ramble so long.
No, you're
Okay.
fine. That's the beauty part of the forums, because you get a chance to really start talking and engaging. So we're going to go right into the.
Brooke,
Yes.
I just want to say, candidates, I know I let you go on a little bit longer than it was expected on that last question and everything. We're going to definitely try to make sure we keep to the time that is supposed to be allotted to you, all right?
Okay.
So that we can make sure everyone gets a great opportunity to share what their goals are and everything.
Awesome. We're going to go right into the question and answer session. The first set of questions that we have was actually presented to us from the Executive Committee of the Hardin County Democratic Party. And on this round, you will have 2 minutes to answer the question. Please be mindful of the timekeeper. And the first question we have: if elected, how would you support the veterans? And we're going to start this round with Jimmy.
All right. So, first thing that I would want to do is make sure that they have access to care. My uncle served in the war, and he lives here in Franklin, Kentucky, and he literally has to drive to Nashville, Tennessee to get services. He can have some lab work done about 20 minutes from here, but anything else he has to literally drive to another state to get assistance. We need to be able to have any veteran go anywhere of their choice to receive care and services. So that's one thing that's very important to me. Number two, just overall expanding services, making sure that if you serve your country, that you're not going to lose benefits. I'm going to probably step up a little bit more for the LGBT veterans. We've got some individuals that have been banned and discharged for their sexual orientation. I think those need to be reversed and then given full credit for their service. Again, it's just about providing support, giving them local options versus having, I think we've got 3 facilities in the state, if I'm correct. We just need to have more services available. Thank you.
30 seconds.
I've concluded.
Okay. He finished it right on the money. Okay, Eric, same question. If elected, how would you support veterans?
Well, first off, I would vote to increase funding. Well, first off, can I ask you, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. I tried to turn up my mic. I'm not sure if I did. All right. Mm-hmm. So first off, I believe that and I would vote for fully funding the VA. Right now we have a backlog in the benefits that are guaranteed to them, but there is a shortfall in terms of funding, so I would fully fund that. And then beyond that, I do believe in the Housing for All program for our over 500,000 homeless, many of which are veterans. And so that will benefit them. And then honestly, probably the best thing I can do for our veterans, especially future veterans is my stance against war. I think the best thing that we can do for our military, for people who serve in our military, is stop putting them in harm's way when we don't need to. And I am very against our policy of endless regime change war and, trying to control the world and overthrow dictators and sovereign nations and install people that we like. I don't think we should be doing that. I don't think we should be committing our troops to that. And that is absolutely what I would do.
Okay, Maggie Jo.
Yeah, so I know Mike Broihier is going to have a lot to say on this, as he is a veteran and he has served, and I'm very grateful for those that have. Since fourth grade, I remember 1991, we went to war. The effects that had on society of children at home, the trauma of it all. I've been seeing it my whole life, and we thought it would be over, and then we had 9/11, and then we thought it would be over when Obama was elected. And I believe in many ways that there have been times in our history where we have sent our servicemen and women overseas or to disasters with good reason to ask them to make those sacrifices. But I think my generation is having a harder and harder time feeling that those lives lost and those risks taken are legitimate and reasonable, given that, we don't talk about it much now, but the threats of weapons of mass destruction and things like that were incredibly traumatizing when I was first, entering into law school and seeing I'm an administration where I'm learning in the books that we have these things called checks and balances, but then suddenly we don't, which I have a real hard time understanding why or how a president has come into so much power that he can kill a man and basically start an almost war earlier this year. There's an airplane of civilians that was downed, and I think we've just jumped from tragedy to tragedy, forgetting that, at the heart of all of this may not be legitimate purposes for war in some circumstances. And I've not been on the ground myself, and I highly respect Mike and Amy's service and that they have. Now, in terms of what I have done, I spent the first 10 years of my legal career near 2 Navy bases. And as kids were coming home from war that were younger than me and getting in trouble in the courts and things like that, I really started to notice that there's a real need for veterans assistance with regard to legal aid, because like Jimmy said, okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now we'll hear from Bennie J.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank our veterans for your service. Mr. Mike Broihier, thank you, sir. And also Amy McGrath, for their service, who's in this particular race. My father was actually a Korean War veteran. And so I have a lot of family and friends within my circle who are veterans who've been in pretty much of the wars from Vietnam all the way to the current wars we have now. One of the main things I want to see, as Mr. Ausbrooks brought up earlier, is why do folks, our veterans, have to go travel so far to get the services they need? We need to provide them with utmost top-notch care that they can get medically. They need dealing with the mental illness that goes on that they experience, because as I said, and Mike alluded to it earlier, there's a lot of things going on in war that they see and experience that we don't even have a clue that they go through. And so to come back here to try to adapt to civilian life is a challenge in and of itself. So we should do everything we can to make sure we do everything we can for our veterans, including housing, employment, getting retrained for civilian life. Definitely, we got to do something mainly to stop this suicidal scourge that a lot of our veterans, unfortunately, when they adapt to this civilian life and get in those situations, and there's too high a number of suicides goes on with our veterans. So I would do everything I can in my power to make sure that we provide the services here in Kentucky. Although I understand there's a new veterans VAs getting ready to get built or completed, whatever. But it's one thing to have a building, but you still got to provide the services. So whatever we can do to increase that funding for their care, housing, and just so that because we owe them a debt since they pretty much put their lives on the line for our freedoms that we so much sometimes take advantage of or take for granted.
Okay. Okay, and last we have from Mr. Mike.
Well, it's first of all, thanks everybody. I guess the first thing we need to do is not start stupid wars, and not put people in harm's way, as Eric so eloquently said, for no reason or for ego. You know, the joke about the military is that we have an acronym for everything, and we kind of do. And the one I love is it's about the 4 elements of national power, and the acronym is DIME: diplomatic, information, military, and economic. And those are the way that we project influence and power overseas. And you'll note that the first one is diplomacy. The thing we need to do is re-empower, rebuild the Department of State. You all recall former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis said he was trying to coach Donald Trump on the State Department, and he said, listen, either fully fund the Department of State, you buy me more bullets. And he did not mean that in a good way. You know, he was trying to say, listen, you can't bully and beat up the State Department. They do important work. So first thing, we need to rebuild the State Department. Secondly, dealing with the situation with current veterans. And for me, if you're a honorably discharged veteran and you need services, you know, one trip to the VA, and if they cannot take you, and if you are not within range, you should get a gold card, and that should be usable any place to get any kind of health treatment that you deserve, whether it's mental health care, which is most important to cut back on suicides, or to deal with the ongoing problem that many of us veterans suffer. Also, there's something that people don't talk about a lot, but one of the things we need to deal with in the military is dealing with the stigmatization of victims of sexual assault. There's a very high rate of sexual assault in the military, and there's an ongoing debate about whether local commanders have got whether the climate supports local commanders in dealing with this effectively. And frankly, I don't have the right answer. I'd hate to take authority to try these cases out of the hands of local authority, but we've not made a lot of progress on dealing with what happens to the victims of sexual assault. So those are the top 3 things I like to deal with veterans.
Well, I thank you all so much. And now for our next question. As it pertains to what you're looking to do once elected, what would be the first ideal bill that you would like to sponsor for us? I'm going to repeat that again. What would be the ideal first bill you would like to sponsor once elected? And we're going to start with Eric.
Right. Yeah, that's
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I apologize. Let me give you a time on it too. Sorry. And you will have 1 minute to answer this one.
Okay. It's a good question. Ideally, the first thing that I would, co-sponsor or tackle is money in politics. Unfortunately, that's something that's going to have to, probably go through a constitutional amendment instead of legislation. So I'm going to go with Medicare for All. Just because I want to be very clear where I stand on that, and I'll absolutely fight for it. Something that we can do. Anything we do in terms of healthcare is going to be partisan. We're going to get no Republican support. Whether we go for Medicare for All, we go for expand the Affordable Care Act. I believe that Medicare for All is the right path. So that's what I will be fighting for, and something that we can do that immediately will save 32 to 45,000 Americans' lives every single year who die because they're uninsured or underinsured. So that's my answer. Medicare for All.
Thank you. Next, we will have Maggie Jo.
Well, I would certainly go with Medicare for all if Eric hadn't already. So I'll go with my other major priority. Obviously, none of this matters unless we have a planet to live on. The Green New Deal, I think, would help economically while we make the transition from a heavily reliant fossil fuel industry. So I would say that the Green New Deal, and then I guess my second place would be online voting and one person, one vote, online secure voting with verification at the United States Postal Service.
Okay, thank you. Bennie J. Did we lose Bennie?
He
Bennie? While he's coming back, I'm going to go over to Mike. We'll come back to Bennie.
They're in the back in the refrigerator door.
Okay, so over to me.
No, where are we at? We're with Mike or with Bennie? Who am I speaking to?
Mike.
Oh, Mike. Okay, yes, Mike. Go ahead.
Well, since we've already addressed healthcare, I would say national infrastructure bill. I think that the government, big government, is good at a couple things. One of them is making war, and the other one is building big projects. And we built the interstate highway system as a part of our defense strategy, and it still is today. And with my national infrastructure bill, we would take every major bridge, highway, inland waterway, and I'd add in rural broadband to that into a national infrastructure bill. We would build it, we'd maintain it, we'd repair it, and we'd replace it on a schedule, so that states, for example, like Kentucky and Ohio, are not responsible for replacing something like the Brent Spence Bridge, which it goes from Covington to Cincinnati. I know it's a hot topic in northern Kentucky, but right now that bridge was designed to support one interstate at 3 lanes, and now it supports 2 interstates at 4 lanes. You can't get an emergency vehicle across it if there's an accident, and it's falling apart.
Okay. Jimmy, same question.
Okay, so since we're all picking different topics, living wages, and not just a $15 an hour minimum pay increase, but also setting up a review every 2 years for cost of living increases, and making sure that it's structured so we don't have to wait another 10 years before this is implemented. Because as someone who basically lives paycheck to paycheck, it's important that we get paid for our services. Our community gets paid for their services. Also support unions. There's just a lot of things that we can do that Mitch McConnell is just avoiding right now, and giving everyone an opportunity to make a living. I can't understand the reasoning other than they just want to keep it for themselves. Thank you.
Okay. I believe we started with Eric. Did Bennie J join back in? Okay. All right. So we're going to go to our next question. And it will actually start with Maggie Jo on this one. It's how important is the deficit to you, and what would you do to address the issue? How important, and I want to repeat it again just so make sure everybody heard it. How important is the deficit to you, and what would you do to address the issue? And on this one, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, well, one of the first things I would do, because I am certainly one of the largely affected student loan borrowers, basically we have burdened the next generation with a far worse economy than we had when I was coming up through college. And so, basically we're causing stalling in our own economy because of the student loan debt burdens and things like that. So improving the deficit, I think, would start with actually taxing wealthy people for the first time in 40 years at a fair rate, because we're living in a country currently where Amazon, I think, made, billions of dollars, never paid a single cent in income taxes, whereas the vast majority of their employees are in much more difficult situations financially. And so I would say that by, altering the way in which we treat our economy in terms of who has economy would improve us quite a bit. The home ownership numbers from 2005 to 2014, due to the doubling of student debt, basically the cost of tuition doubled, whereas other consumer products did not, would infuse our communities with more home buyers, more people with liquidity to go out and do things that they might enjoy. And as far as the deficit goes, we need to start paying more attention to the fact that it's hurting people in major ways in the lower income levels than those that are in, the elite 0.1% of the population. And so I think by correcting the built-in inequality, we could improve the deficit by bringing more people into the economy, because right now people are locked out. They don't have the financial ability to be involved.
Okay. Thank you. And did we ever catch back up with Bennie J?
I don't know.
I think we've lost him. Okay. Well, we're going to go right over to Mike. Same question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, debt is kind of, we all have debt. Mortgages are very typical, student loans and things like that. But I guess for me, it's a question of how we're accumulating that debt and why on the national level. For me, I'm a supporter of universal basic income. I would much rather see money being injected at the bottom of the economic food chain than the top. For example, during this coronavirus pandemic, just last week we pumped in half a $500 billion into the economy to businesses, and particularly the oil and gas companies, and that $500 billion would have paid UBI on the model of Andrew Yang $1,000 a month for every single American adult, would have paid for UBI for 4 months. And so the way we're seeing things happening now is people are having to make a decision about whether they go to work and get infected or infect their workmates, and then bring that infection home to their families, or miss a paycheck and possibly lose their home, their car, etc. So I definitely am supportive of UBI, because if we're going to have debt, and we are going to have debt, that it's the money that we spend on the national level goes into the workers' pockets and not the pockets of corporations.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Jimmy, same question.
Oh, thank you. It's very important to me. If we're going to be in debt, we need to be responsible, and we also need to hold those leaders accountable. I agree with Maggie Jo on student loan debt. As someone who has $180,000 in student loan debt, very much in favor of forgiving that. And then I also agree with Mike on UBI, helping those that, if we're going to spend it, let's spend it on us. And second, we don't need to continue bailouts for major corporations. We need to bail out our American citizens, because corporations are just going to take that money, give it to their CEOs, and it's still going to leave every American citizen still struggling to pay those bills. So again, it's just being accountable and balancing a budget, because we can do it. We've done it in the past. We can do it again.
Okay, we'll go over to Eric.
All right. Yeah, so in regards to the debt and deficit, first I'd like to point out the fact that Democrats, in recent history, have done a lot better job than Republicans. And I'm not that worried about it. If you subscribe to modern monetary theory, which I think is promising. It says you don't really have to worry about the debt a whole lot because money out means money in the hands of someone, right, in the economy. But and then also it just comes down to the deficit. Now it's skyrocketed to about $1 trillion right now. But Clinton has erased the deficit. Obama cut it in half. We can do that. We can pay for our stuff, and as long as you eliminate the deficit, so that we're not losing money, we're gaining money. The debt's not an issue, right? So, and then I am gonna parrot a lot of the things that Jimmy, Maggie, and Mike have said in terms of where money needs to go. Principle, an economic principle, velocity of money, which explains how money moves throughout an economy, and kind of judges what a healthy economy is. Says that generally speaking, if you put money in the hands of the rich, they're going to spend 5-10% of that money, hold on to the rest of it. Whereas if you put money in the hands of workers, they're going to spend 100 to 110% of that, right? Which stimulates the economy, gets the economy going. So, lots of the policies that I'm for is geared around that, putting money into the hands of the people. And the major debt that I worry about is the debt of the American people. Student loan debt over 1.6 trillion, credit card debt over $1 trillion. My time's about to run out, but that's how I feel about it.
Okay, thank you very much. And just to confirm, I did not see that Bennie J has joined back in, so we're going to go on to the next question. And this next question will be a 1-minute question. What ways would you work across the aisle to get legislation to be beneficial for Kentucky done? What ways will you be working to work across the aisles for legislation to be passed? For legislation to be beneficial in Kentucky to be done. And we're going to start this one with Mike.
All right, unmuted. All right, so I have a plan, and I kind of look at this a little differently than other people do. Too often, to get money, to get projects done, we are in competition with other states. And I want to use Appalachia as an example. We've got 8 coal-producing Appalachian states, neighbors of us here in Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, etc., West Virginia. And here's the way I look at rebuilding Appalachia, is that if you work with the senators and the congressmen and the governors of those 8 adjoining states, you've created a train that you are not going to stop. When you demand that we repair the damage, economic and the ecological damage that was done to Appalachia for the last 200 years of the extractive economy we've had, if you get 8 states working together on that across the aisle, that's something that can't be stopped.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. And Jimmy, same question.
Okay. I think it's very important that we meet them where they are. Find the common ground that we can build on. I'm a little bit different, I guess, than some of the other candidates in that when elected and I swear in and I walk onto that Senate floor, my party is being left at the door. I'm not going to vote for something because it's party. I'm not going to vote against it because it's party. I'm going to vote for something that I know is going to help my community, help my state. I'm going to vote against things that I know isn't going to be beneficial to the ones that I love. So again, it's just meeting them where they're at and building that common ground. And I think we can do that if we put our heads together. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Eric.
So I will work with Republicans on anything that I currently agree with. I'm not going to compromise my values for, just for the sake of bipartisanship. I'm not going to take Rand Paul, for example. He has a, somewhat anti-war record. I could work with him on that. But then when he wants to give tax breaks to the wealthiest Americans, I will fight him on that. And that just kind of how it goes across the board. And honestly, to parrot Jimmy Ausbrooks, I don't care if someone has a D next to their name or an R next to their name. Same thing, and how the current Democratic Party is in Congress. I'll probably be fighting them as much as Republicans on a lot of issues. So, we basically have a Congress full of corporatists on both sides. So, if there's common ground, I'll work with them. That's the end of my answer.
Do you want me to go ahead? I don't know. Or is Benny?
Yes, go ahead. I think we lost Tanya that time.
Oh no! Should we give her a moment? I don't.
I'll tell you what. We'll go ahead and give her a moment, ladies and gentlemen. We'll give her a moment to try to get back on. I'm sure she's frantic right now. So we'll give her a moment to get back on. If not, there she goes. She's coming back now.
There she is.
Give her a few more seconds. I'm sure she'll be right on with us. Give you guys time to get some thoughts together.
Hey, did I get back on?
Welcome back, Benny. Welcome back.
Oh man, I hit one button, man, and it's a wrap. Golly, I apologize for missing off. Like an opportunity to recoup, maybe. Oh.
Yeah, Tanya's back now, so we'll go ahead and get started. Give her a second to regroup, and we'll get started. Glad to have you back, Tanya.
Yes, me too. Me too. All right. So I think we ended with Eric.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now that means it's Maggie Jo's turn?
Yeah, but should we give Benny a chance on the other question? He got kicked off too. I don't know.
He's missed two questions, so we're gonna circle back around to get his answers.
Oh, you got to answer three at once, Benny J.
Yes, we will circle back around to give you a chance, Benny. Understood. All right, Miss Maggie, what we got?
Yeah, so I have worked with differing views the entirety of my career. I've been a prosecutor and a public defender. I've been a solo practice attorney, and dealing with people with very different views can sometimes be difficult, but luckily we have checks and balances and juries to sort things out. Some places in history where I've seen Democrats meet halfway with Republicans, some places have in every way made me question their loyalty to democratic values. Situations such as don't ask, don't tell, separate but equal, the Patriot Act, certain rules regarding women's rights and going to a doctor before getting an abortion, or medicinal marijuana instead of full legal cannabis, or immigration issues where I know one of our opponents, Amy McGrath, said she'd be willing to build the wall in order to agree on the Dreamers. And I don't agree with those sorts of actions. I tend to be one that will dig my heels in before I will let somebody or some small subgroup suffer another blow to their rights because we're meeting someone halfway. I think that's inexcusable.
Okay. And Benny J, now that you're back with us, I'm going to give you an opportunity to answer this question. So it'll be just two other questions you'll have to answer. What would you do to work across the aisle to get legislation beneficial for Kentucky done?
Well, like one of our great senators from the mid 19th century, like Henry Clay, he was a great compromiser. So I guess basically I would try to compromise, but not, probably to the point where I want to make sure that what's best for all Kentuckians. You got to look at the bill and see if it's going to benefit the greater good and majority of the people, and if it's going to be a good bill, period. If it's something that I would propose or introduce, I want to make sure I listen to everybody, listen to all sides, sit back and preferably one of the hardest things that we can do, and I've seen it happen, is we have a hard time agreeing to disagree. And I think if we can practice that art, then we can get a lot more done. So I have no problem working with my colleagues across the aisle. If our dear friends in Kentucky decide to hire me to be the representative.
Okay. Our next question will also be a 1-minute question. What type of judges would you like to affirm?
What kind of what, please?
What type of judges would you like to affirm?
I'm kind
well, hold on. Now this is we're gonna start with Jimmy for this question, and it's gonna take it's gonna be a 1-minute-er.
All right. First and foremost, they need to be experienced. Second, fair and impartial. I believe they also need to recognize that no man should have the right to govern a woman's body nor her reproductive choices. I think
Yeah, could you do that in a glass of milk?
Please mute your lines.
Sorry.
Not you.
And again, just be willing to literally listen to the cases, not be prejudged, and just open. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. Eric, same question.
Yeah, so I think Roe v. Wade is definitely a litmus test. Someone's not going to return. Someone who will overturn Citizens United and Buck v. Vallejo, which in my opinion are the two worst Supreme Court decisions in modern history. Basically, both of them led to our corrupt system, big money rules, and money interest really controls Washington, D.C. because of unlimited financing. So I'd like to appoint more judges like that. Be my answer.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. And now we will hear from Maggie Jo. Same question.
Yeah, so currently what we're working with in many of my cases and my clients' cases are inexperienced judges that don't necessarily meet what the founders of the United States saw in terms of our federal judiciary. What's happened is Mitch McConnell has noted that our courts can and will be manipulated in the background by his poor behavior, such as Merrick Garland's situation. But I would say, we want judges that aren't just Federalist Society committed. We want unbiased, well-vetted, educated, experienced, unbiased judges that will listen to sort of the community needs, not necessarily those of extremists. And in terms of increasing the federal judiciary, I think that it would be very good in terms of lowering caseloads, perhaps getting, oh, my time's up. Sorry.
You're good there. No, you're fine. And now Bennie J. Bennie J.
Thank you for the question. First of all, you have to have judges that are qualified. And Maggie Jo and everyone else said, then they have to have the experience. I would like to anywhere from liberal to moderate, with a tad bit of, going a little bit to the right, not too far. But the main thing is they have to be fair and impartial, be very knowledgeable about their the law, number one. Number two, have experience and have litigation experience. And depending on who's recommending those particular judges, find out what their agenda is. It is going to be something that's going to benefit the citizens equally, under the law. We do have due process equally under the law, supposedly, but like Maggie Jo mentioned, Mitch McConnell just bum rushing judges through who don't have any experience. And so basically, that would be what I'd want to see in a judge. First, highly qualified, experienced, unbiased, and they have the rule of law, and they really actually look at the case and really make sure they have a nice balanced approach. And
time's up.
Thank you.
Okay. And now our next question would be, would you support
Can I have
expenditures?
a crack at that one?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip over someone?
It's Mike.
Mike. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. Yes, Mike,
worries.
yes, you may. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay, no worries. First, I'd say this. I don't think anyone meeting with us here today who bothered to show up would have ever voted to seat Justice Kavanaugh on the bench. And I just think that we have to take a look at the person. And one thing that Maggie, I think, spoke to was, judicial temperament. Is this a sane, balanced, common sense person who has the ability to judge the people coming before them in sometimes life or death situations objectively? And secondly, would let it be known to any administration that was appointing or nominated a judge, the Supreme Court, for example, that in this, like particularly the Supreme Court, it better be a woman. Right now, we have 3 women represented on the Supreme Court, but grossly misrepresented of the number of women in our population. We've got 1 African American Supreme Court justice, and so we need to diversify our bench with qualified judges with a strong judicial temperament and people who are not beholden to corporate or political interests.
Good deal. Good deal. Thank you so much, Mike. I do apologize for almost missing you on that one.
No worries.
Okay, next question. How would you ensure that veterans receive less obstacles for disability ratings and benefits? And I'll give each of you 2 minutes on this question. And I can read it again. How would you ensure that veterans receive less obstacles for disability ratings and benefits? And this time we'll start with Eric.
All right. Well, I'm not really sure what to say outside of increasing funding to it so that they get the resources that they need to appropriately address these issues. I'm not nuanced enough, obviously, in anything in particular in regards to something that may be denied at this point. But if I'm understanding the question correctly, I would look at that and I would just vote for any legislation that would make sure that our veterans are taken care of.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. And next we'll have Maggie Jo.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry, I didn't know if I went out just a little bit. Yeah, so one of the things that I was going to speak about previously in your question regarding veterans is the lack of legal resources for folks who are fighting these disability ratings fights. Recently, the Louisville Legal Aid Office sent out a letter to many of us lawyers talking about the essential services that some folks that are coming back from war or maybe not coming back from war, either they're injured or not injured, they may be disabled, but they're being denied benefits on the basis of some sort of exclusion or you don't meet this standard or you didn't do this much work. And I think we've seen it in the public healthcare system as well. We've got to stop leaving people out. When we leave people out, we have issues, double and triple in severity, things such as the suicide rate.
No, I'm okay, thank you.
I'm sorry?
Please mute your phone lines if you're not one of the candidates, please. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was my time call. I was like, oh, no.
No, you're doing fine.
civilian legal services are that are being utilized for many of these arguments with the VA for qualifying for benefits or a particular disability rating to get this or that. It's the same as the civilian health insurance problems with, you know, discrimination. We just need systems that work for everybody. We don't need to be you know, giving certain people certain benefits and others these other benefits. At the end of the day, we're all entitled to health care. We should all receive the best care that we can have. And there shouldn't be some sort of predetermination by some board whether or not you're ill enough. You know, those sorts of things lead to bigger problems. People get sicker. There's, you know, suicide increases, increased needs for mental health. And then obviously these are people that are affecting their families as well. You know, you want people to be around their children happily and not with a, you know, a hurt mind. So that's another thing that drives me nuts about the system, is that we just need to expand care. That's really it.
Well, thank you, Maggie Jo. Bennie J, same question.
Thank you for the question. First of all, my main thing is, if you served and you were discharged honorably, there should be no reason why you shouldn't have the best medical care possible. I don't care what situation is. Someone told me in Meade County that there's a lot of hoops that folks jump to meet a certain qualification, and then they get denied for this and that. I'm going to cut the bureaucracy. Right? If you served honorably and you were discharged honorably, then you should be able to receive all your benefits. No, nothing's going to be held against you because you didn't qualify for this. You're going to qualify because you served your country. And that will be one way to cut the red tape. And I would hire more staff, medical staff, the VAs. You know, more funding needs to be done to make sure we have the adequate staff to be able to serve everybody. I happen to know the new Commissioner of Veteran Affairs that Governor Broihier just appointed. I have a working relationship with him. I will have a working relationship with him. And also a General Henry Huntley, who was a Kentucky State graduate and who went on to become a general. He's in D.C. now, working with the VA. So I would definitely work with them to ensure that not only our veterans here in Kentucky get the proper care and medical assistance and everything they need for them and their families. I would also do that for the rest of our veterans throughout our country who have served and had an honorable discharge. So they are why we are enjoying these freedoms today.
Okay, thank you very much, Bennie J. Now we'll hear from Mike.
Well, I'll tell you, I think that first of all is that if we quickly move to a single-payer healthcare system, day-to-day services for veterans, just routine things that you encounter as you age and go through your life, will become not that important. The VA wouldn't be, you wouldn't be traveling to the VA to get your eyes checked, or your teeth checked, or things like that, and so you wouldn't need the specific care that our VA centers provide for service-related injuries and disabilities. The second thing, I guess the most important thing to me, is that people need to acknowledge that the wounds that we bring back from war do not immediately manifest themselves. And, while when you step out of the Marine Corps or the Army, Navy, Air Force at 22 or 23, you feel like $1 million, but the cumulative effect of your service on your joints, your knees, your feet, your back, can manifest itself over time. So we need a much more flexible system than we have now, which is when you leave the service, you have disabilities determined. And for young folks, and I got to tell you, when I got out, I wasn't actually a young guy. I'd served over 20 years, and I was unwilling to say I was hurt in one way or another. But those things catch up to you, and so we shouldn't hang a certain level of disability on people as they exit the service, and make a more flexible system where you can go back and say, I'm an honorably discharged veteran, and I'm having this problem, and I need this help. But I think the first step is to to unburden the VA with day-to-day care of veterans by having a single-payer healthcare system that's accessible to everyone and allow the VA to deal with service-related injuries specifically.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Jimmy?
All right. First is, let's kind of take the politics out of the process and replace it with actual needs. I like what Mike said, that initially, one thing appears, down the road, something else may appear. So that's something that needs to be addressed and looked at. Funding limits should never be a deterrent in providing services or benefits to the men and women that serve our country. So increasing funding, like Eric said, that has to be a priority. Because if we can spend hundreds of billions of dollars on weapons of war, we can spend that money on our servicemen and women that has sacrificed their life, their time, their family, their limbs. So it's just, again, let's just use common sense when we're applying these benefits and scoring these men and women. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. And I did start with Eric. Okay, we're going to go to our next question. And this will be another 1-minuter. It will be, would you support expenditures for housing for the homeless? Would you support expenditures for housing for the homeless? 1 minute, and we're going to start with Maggie Jo.
I guess you could see me nodding my head.
Like crazy. That's not your 1 minute.
The answer is yes. I was very unfortunate to get out of law school just a few years before the housing crisis, and people still are not rebounding. We bailed out the banks, we bailed out auto. What about the people? We have more homeless children in the state of Kentucky than any other state in the United States. It's a serious problem because, even just a month of homelessness can put a child behind so far in school that they may not ever catch up. Obviously you can't go a month without food. You can't, these are, expenditures for housing, expenditures for food, education, exponentially multiply the goodness of a community. And you can only do as well as the lowest man on that totem pole. And we have got to lift everyone up. We bailed out the banks. Give us our housing. People deserve to have a house. And I think we can touch the wealthy to get there.
Thank you, Maggie Jo. BDJ.
Thank you for the question. I was a paycheck away from being homeless, and I became homeless when I got laid off about 3 times in 4 months. But thank God there was a service called Wayside Christian Mission. I was able to utilize those services to help get me on my feet. And it must have been an act of God for me to be in that situation, because what I witnessed is what I probably would not have witnessed had I not been in that situation. And I would like to spend those funding on hotels. We have 120 counties. I'd say and homeless is hitting every county in this state, unfortunately. And what I'd like to do is, we always spending or building hotels for conventions and everything. Why not put the same energy in building hotels for homeless model after the Hotel Louisville here, where they actually provide services to address the alcohol and drug addiction. They also offer job skills training for hospitality, as well as other skills that folk would be interested in doing to help rebuild their lives. And it would be a temporary situation. It'd be one if you're single, and also for families. Also in that same hotel.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mike, same question.
Well, I think the fact that the homelessness crisis and the housing crisis in America is kind of self-evident, and as Maggie Jo pointed out, the fact that we have 30% of Kentucky His children are homeless right now is completely disturbing. One thing we need to bear in mind when we talk about housing people, it needs to be tied in with transportation as well, because people say, well, let's build a bunch of homes out in the country. Well, that's great, but buses don't run out here in the country. Trains don't run out here in the country, because if you build someone a home and you expect them to work, then you got to give them a car. So whatever it is that we do has got to be a kind of a holistic plan to address the root causes of homelessness. And one of the reasons I support UBI is universal basic income is the fact that it significantly impacts people at the lowest incomes, at the people the most desperate get the most impact from universal basic income, and allowing them to maintain dignity in their life. They're not worried about where they're going to sleep that night or where their next meal is going to come from.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Jimmy?
All right. Well, first, homelessness is traumatic. As a mental health counselor and a substance abuse counselor, I get to see firsthand the effects and unfortunately the lack of resources that our homeless population have. And a lot of these are veterans and veterans with families. So I think it's important that we do offer quality assistance. I believe we also provide education. And the stigma has to be addressed. We know a lot of proud people, and they don't always ask for the help that they need. So we need to be able to look and see how much of that is existing. And like Mike said, UBI would make a huge difference in our communities. Thank you.
I got off work like this so quiet as I can get to.
Please mute lines if you're not speaking.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Could you ask?
Please speak. Please mute lines if you're not speaking. I'm sorry, Jimmy. Go ahead, please.
Oh, I was finished.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jimmy. And Eric, please. Same question.
Yeah, I do support a housing for all program. Lots of countries like Sweden have successful programs. I'd be remiss not to point out I'm originally from California. That's where I was born and raised.
Oh.
And the homeless crisis there is crazy. I've had friends that have been homeless, that have spent time in homeless shelters with them, and trying to help them get jobs and all the rest. It is an issue. I agree. I'm for a form of UBI tied to automation and public investments. I think that helps. I think literally just building housing helps. I think putting a national cap on annual rent increases help. Raising the minimum wage helps. There's a lot of things that we can do. Medicare for all helps, and I support all those agendas.
Okay. Well, thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. And now we're headed to our next question. How would you ensure that our elections are secured? How would you ensure that our elections are secured? You will have 2 minutes for this question, and we're going to start with Bennie J.
Thank you for the question. First of all, I would take that bill that the election security legislation is on his desk. I would clean that desk up and actually pass that legislation, because bottom line is Russians have interfered in our 2016 elections, and they're doing it again. And Congress has already passed a bill to address the election security legislation. So I would go in Mitch's office, find where he's hiding those bills, and I would definitely get that passed, and make sure that our elections are secure. And in addition to that, I would make sure that every citizen gets an opportunity to vote, and make sure that we do not have any voter suppression activities going on. And like I said, one count, one vote.
Okay. Thank you, Benny. Mike, please, same question.
All right, there I am. I'm unmuted. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that's kind of come out of this coronavirus issue is the fact that, people are talking about doing mail-in votes, and all of a sudden we are faced with a crisis, and people are turning to the U.S. Postal Service. And I've actually taken classified documents. You would just wrap them in an exterior envelope and put them in the mail. And the U.S. Postal Service has an incredible high level of efficiency and security. So, I'm kind of a supporter of mail-in votes. Allow people to vote from home. And one of the best, it provides a paper trail. And of course, as Benny said, we need to focus on meddling in our elections. But if something is done with paper trail, it makes it much, much more difficult to interfere with it. But I just find it ironic that here we are faced with this coronavirus pandemic, and people are suddenly turning to the Postal Service, which is going back to 1992. The government's been trying to privatize and get rid of. And so I kind of like, maybe I'm old-fashioned here, but I kind of like the idea of paper ballot coming in by mail.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. We'll go over to Jimmy. Same question.
All right. I guess number one is we need to realize that it is an issue. Second, I think we need to call out and hold those members of Congress accountable for denying that there is or isn't an issue. I agree completely with Mike, and I think Maggie Jo said earlier, mailing in ballots, that paper trail, that is probably one of the easiest things. Kind of hard to mess up a pencil on a piece of paper. It is or it isn't. So removing some of the electronic components out of it, and I guess kind of going back old school. You show up, you vote, you fill out the form, you mail it in. It's kind of simple. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Now we'll hear from Eric.
So first and foremost, I'm actually really looking forward to Maggie Jo's answer. She has kind of interesting, a very interesting take on this that I haven't fully looked into, but I very much appreciate it. She explained a little bit to me about it. But so I'm coming from the IT world. I know that almost anything's hackable. So for me, it's paper ballots in terms of election security. In terms of election integrity, I do think we need federal oversight of the election system, especially the primaries between the parties, where there has been issues there. I would very happily make Election Day a national holiday, and I would very much be fighting to get money out of politics and instituting a very much like Andrew Yang's democracy dollars idea, publicly financed elections. I think that is going to really transform the way that people vote and the way that campaigns are funded, and really just democracy. So that's what I would do.
Thank you so much, Eric. Maggie Jo?
Thank you, Eric, for the introduction. He's heard me on my spiel before. So Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the United States Constitution lays out the United States Postal Service's duties to deliver the mail, and it comes with it the additional inclusion of the most unbiased, hardest working law enforcement agency in the world, the postal inspectors. They keep our mail safe. They can keep our email safe. I think that it would cost less than about $6 per citizen for the United States government to provide a citizen with an email address that is governed by Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, that would come in under the United States Postal Service postal inspectors, purview. And then what we would institute is actually a double verification vote, whereby you would drop off a paper ballot for verification at the Postal Service, which would then be scanned in and kept in a backup record for all 330 million people. Actually, it'd just be those 16 and over. That email address, of course, would prevent people from doing what they're doing on social media with misleading ads and things like that, because you can't do that. There's a large progeny of case law on the protection of mail and the accuracy of the data in which we receive inside the mail. So if you just applied that to emails and you allow citizens and their government to communicate that way, and you do the double verification of the mail, there you'd have a blockchain vote, essentially. So, we forget that our election system was put in place to keep people out so that only white males could vote. So there's a lot of improvements I would make. Fair districts, federal legislative representation to all people and territories, including Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. I'm seeing Eric smile at that because he's the one that is big on that one. Early voting, auto registration, moderated online town squares, remote and absentee ballots, universal suffrage, proportional representation, term limits in the Electoral College, multi-factor, not just double factor verification. We could also have systems where we go and we check in with our neighbor. Hey, this vote? Okay. So I may be running out of time here, but ultimately we need to abolish voter ID laws, and that's one of the places where currently the Kentucky legislature is arguing this issue. And for years we know what that bill is all about. It's about keeping people out that can't afford an ID. And,
Thank you, Maggie.
all right.
Thank you, Maggie. You did good though. You got it out.
I got it all.
You got it out. That was actually our final question. We're going to go ahead and give candidate Bennie J Smith the opportunity to answer 2 questions that he had missed earlier due to technology issues. So, Bennie J, are you still with us?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. The first question will be...
Praise God.
Okay. The first question we have is, if elected, what would be the first bill you would sponsor? And you actually have 2 minutes.
Okay. I think the very first bill that I would sponsor would probably be Violence Against Women's Act, Violence Against Women Act, because we have such a domestic violence issue against our women. Seems like these guys in here with the machoistic mindset, they always want to just be in control, and they are afraid of strong-minded, independent women. And this violence against women is just gotten out of control, and doesn't seem like they have any type of recourse to, get those. It's a very serious issue. The trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking. Be another one. I definitely want to deschedule and legalize cannabis for medicinal and recreational use in a responsible manner, and set up dispensaries for those nonviolent marijuana offenders, and that way we can use that tax revenue to help boost up the economy. Another bill I want to introduce, like I said, the rapid and light rail passenger train system. If Mr. Lane Chow can give Mr. McConnell $78 million to help on his re-election bid, surely, if she's still there, someone can give us $78+ million to get this train system, and it'll be modeled after the Lynx rail system that I got a chance to experience down in Charlotte, North Carolina. Of course, we can also work out a deal with the R.J. Corman, since they already have a train system here, and we just kind of, and there'll be more job opportunities to put people to work, especially in the Appalachian, rural areas as well. I definitely would put funding in solar panels, wind turbines, so that we can definitely invest
Time's up.
in
Okay.
renewable energy and energy technology jobs.
Thank you. Okay. And now we're going to go to the next question. And this one, but also, it is a one, you'll have 1 minute on this one. How important is the deficit to you, and what would you do to address the issue?
Could you repeat that, please? That's me still?
Yes, it's still you. These are the two questions that you'd actually missed.
Okay, repeat that again, please, ma'am.
Sure. How important is the deficit to you, and what would you do to address the issue?
Oh my God, the deficit, that's the one, that's the main, one of my main platform initiatives. Basically, we're now, 24 trillion in debt now. And President Obama at least left us in a better shape financially than what Mr. Trump has ballooned the economy up to now. So basically, what I would do, I would reverse what Mr. Trump has done, and when he gave tax breaks to the rich, and I would tax those 1%ers, and also I would tax the insurance companies. I would tax the pharmaceutical companies, because those funds from that revenue can definitely fund some many services that we desperately need. Medicaid needs to be increased. Medicare for all be an opportunity to we have some extra money to finally be able to kind of, and then there would be a balanced budget amendment that we desperately need. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We're getting ready to go into closing statements. We give each of you 1 minute to say anything that you feel that you did not get a chance to say. It is 60 seconds, 1 minute, that we can have the lasting impression of you as a candidate. So we're going to go ahead and start with Mike and proceed from there. Mike?
All right, I'm unmuted here. Yep, I'm unmuted.
Understood.
So people think that defeating Donald Trump's the most important thing in 2020. I disagree. I think that defeating Mitch McConnell is the most important 2020. He has enabled Donald Trump to do the ridiculous things he has done by not checking his power. And the most important thing, of course, is him packing the federal bench with ideologically driven and unqualified judges. So honestly, I think for the sake of the nation, the sake of the Republic and the Constitution, that defeating Mitch McConnell is the most important thing. And voters in Kentucky need to take a look and say, who's most likely to beat Mitch McConnell? And of course, all of us think it's them, but I think it's me. I'm a farmer that carries a lot of weight in Kentucky. I'm a retired combat veteran and also a former educator. Everyone in Kentucky knows a teacher, a veteran, an educator. I can talk to those people and not only win the Democratic vote with my progressive ideas, but also bring over the handful of Republicans we need to beat Mitch McConnell.
Thank you, Mike. Jimmy, please.
All right. First, I want to thank you for having us. I also want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening tonight. I know that I'm a candidate that you can trust. I'm very open and very transparent. I'm running because it's important to be represented, and we haven't been represented in quite a while. I'm committed to restoring integrity and leadership in Washington, because I'm going to put our interests first, not special interest. And so if you want to know more about me and my candidacy, please check out jimmyforkentucky.com.
Thank you, Jimmy. Eric?
Yep. Again, thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone showing up. In terms of electability, in terms of defeating Mitch McConnell, the one thing that I really hope that we do, and there's, I believe, a few candidates that fall into this category, I hope that we elect someone who does not take any big money. No PAC money, no super PAC money, no corp PAC money, no special interest money, no lobbyist money. I, for one, take none of that. And because that really is the most bipartisan issue that you can hit Mitch McConnell on. That is his legacy in politics. He believes in money in politics so much that he sued the Federal Election Commission to go away Supreme Court. All right, so in terms of me, I have all my issues laid out, ericrothmuller.com. You should know exactly what you get with me. And if you're comfortable with me being your voice on the floor of the Senate, I ask for your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Maggie Jo.
So with my campaign, you can find us at electmojo.com. I've been a litigation attorney on behalf of individuals and small businesses for 15 years. And in almost every single case that I've ever worked on, there's some element of corporate or government malfeasance. And those are the sort of things that you get when you have somebody like Mitch McConnell, who purely cares about his own pockets and less about the people. He calls himself a cynic. I'm not. I'm an optimist, and so I've made us a lovely sticker, and you can buy these at my online store by the end of the week. We should have that online store up and going. Our printer is taking some time with the tragic pandemic that we're facing because of our highly inept government. One of the people having much to do with that is Mitch McConnell. Time and time again, in a time of crisis, he does not protect us. He goes home and goes on vacation. This is not the first time nor the last, so that's why we need to get rid of him. Our government should be accountable to us. The people should be free to find their American dream, regardless of who they love or where they live or what sort of mental health care situation that they're in. We need civil rights for everyone. Everybody deserves housing and a good climate, a home that's safe, and education that is safe as well, and also worth the money. We need better communities. We need communications between the people and their government. We need conservation in its truest form, not conservatives claiming that they're conserving anything for anyone other than themselves. Again, it's electmojo.com. I hope you'll check out my campaign.
Thank you, Maggie Jo. Thank you, Maggie Jo. And we have Bennie J. 1 minute.
All right. First of all, thank you so much for having this forum, and I want to thank all my other candidate opponents. Appreciate you all. It takes courage and commitment to be in this type of environment and race. As one who was born in Danville, Kentucky, also known as the City of First, on Derby Day, thank God for allowing me to be a candidate in this race, and I pretty much look forward to being representative for all citizens in this state, not just a very few with the money or those special interests. Mitch McConnell has been kind of us ever since his questionable military service back in 1967. We had a letter written, but that's another story. We'll get to that at some point. But thank you for allowing me to be your candidate, and just as everyone else thinks, and I think I best represent you in D.C. I'm not corruptible, never have been, never will be, and I have everyone's best interest at heart. And you can also learn a little bit more about my campaign at BennieJSmith.com. It's BENIEJ Smith.com. I definitely want to make sure we can train our coal miners who are desperately needs help and assistance, and permanently fund the Black Lung Disease Fund.
Thank you. Well, we would like to thank, on behalf of the Greater Hardin County Women's Network, all of you for participating in the Let the Voters Choose Democratic U.S. Senatorial Candidates Forum. We would like to give a special thanks to Lacey Rice. We have Nancy Chancellor Cox, Brenda Thomas. We also like to thank Stan Holmes for being an outstanding timekeeper, and Ben Sharon for the great article in the News Enterprise. Candidates, we thank you all so much for participating on tonight. It meant everything, and I know with us doing this new technology, we had a little fun in the process. And to all of, and for all who were able to Zoom in and listen, we hope you got some great information. A couple of dates to remember. April 20th, 2020 is the final day to register to vote. Please spread that word with all of your family and friends. They can go online and do it, since most of us are quarantined in some way, shape, or form. Please remember that. And also, the census ballots are out there now. Everybody get counted. There's no excuses. Again, we're all in the house, so we can find a way to call or email or send the form right back in before the post office closes. Last and certainly not least, please remember May 19th, 2020 is the primary election date when we have the opportunity to elect our next U.S. Senator candidate that will be ready for the runoff in November. I would like to present to you all again Mr. Jimmy Ausbrooks, Maggie Jo Hilliard, Mike Broihier, Eric Rothmuller, State Representatives Charles Booker, and Bennie J Smith, candidates for the U.S. Senatorial Candidates Forum.
Thank you.
Again, this is Councilwoman Tanya Seabrooks from the city of Radcliff saying thank you for hanging out with me on today, and I wish you all much success. And again, don't forget, May 19th, 2020, value your vote and vote your values. You all have a great
On behalf
evening.
of the Greater Hardin County Women's Network, thank you very much for watching this presentation.